You had the former head of Shin Bet on CNN saying, we need the international community to save Israel from itself. In other words, we need people to protest, to move their government, to curb us, because we don't have the ability to do it. We don't have a democracy, and we will not have security until we end the occupation. That's what the former head of Shin Bet says. But on that same network, Van Jones has a different take.
If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant, that's not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish, bigoted act.
Pause it for a second.
A pogrom?
The reason why people were protesting out in front of that synagogue in L.A., and I agree, if you go to some random temple and start protesting Jews,
be bad.
Bad.
Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic. It's not a pogrom, but nevertheless, hyperbole aside,
hateful.
That is anti-Semitism.
Textbook anti-Semitism.
But let's say, hypothetically speaking, that there was, I don't know, a recruitment drive happening at a synagogue for the IDF. Would that be different? Or let's say, for instance, maybe they were selling off Palestinian land to outside investors for basically, I mean, it's, I don't know how else you call it, like colonial settlism. But here it is. This is what was going on at that synagogue. Real estate in Israel. Well, it turns out the real estate was not in Israel.
They list West Bank properties.
It was in the occupied territories. And according to rabbis standing outside of the synagogue at the time, who I guess, according to Van Jones, were participating in this program, it's illegal to sell land that's not yours.
Yes, and we played months ago. There was a similar event at the Teaneck, New Jersey synagogue where an anti-Zionist Jewish man went in front of the local government there and protested this and said, this is probably illegal. This is both illegal under international law and potentially illegal under U.S. law, because when you're hosting these things at synagogues, this is an event where you're basically saying this is a real estate opportunity, but only for this select group of people. So you could make a case that is not legal in terms of a discrimination statute. But like, they're doing this on purpose at synagogues because they know people are going to protest, and then they can say, 100%. This is anti-Semitic.
I mean, had this been done at the local Holiday Inn and the same protest took place, they wouldn't be able to do this. So they basically hide in a synagogue doing activities that are not Jewish. There's nothing Jewish about, inherently Jewish about buying property. There's nothing inherently Jewish, and I would argue, actually, it is inherently not Jewish to buy stolen property. But let's hear Van Jones telling us if this is the day that Donald Trump became president.
Not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish, bigoted act. If you want to be a part of a protest, let's go to a mosque. Let's go and harass the Muslims. That's not a protest. So we've got to get clear in our country what is a fair protest about policy, you can agree or disagree, and what's going after people, human beings, terrifying moms, grandmas, children who are trying to be a part of a neighborhood. The Jewish neighborhoods in LA are well known. Nobody is confused where they are. So if you show up there wearing a keffiyeh, you show up there with your face covered, you show up there chanting river to the sea, that would be just like a white person running up with a Confederate flag in Harlem. You're not trying to start a conversation, you're trying to start a fight. Stop doing that. Don't do that. We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it had been solved. I'm less concerned about the politicians now.
Can you
I'm
pause
concerned
just for
about
a
the
sec?
people.
I mean, so We can go back in a second, but notice how he compares the keffiyeh to a Confederate flag. But would you say the same if, say, you were in a predominantly Palestinian community and someone showed up with the flag of Israel with the Star of David on that? Would you compare that to the Confederate flag? Would he do that? In both instances, this would be somebody who's going there to potentially, if in his hypothetical, harass this group of people, know what they're doing, going into a neighborhood, knowing that this is a group of people that I want to demonstrate against. He wouldn't make that case, right? He wouldn't call the Israel flag equivalent to the Confederate flag, because underneath all of this, what he's trying to do is to conflate the keffiyeh and shows of Palestinian solidarity with far-right Confederacy. That he doesn't do that in the reverse. He says it about that, and that is where it's extremely, extremely dangerous to make that connection, because it's clearly he's participating in a moral panic. I saw Michael Hobbs say this on Twitter, and I think it's a really smart point. This anti-Semitism moral panic, where there are increased instances of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia all across the country. But the way that this particular fixation is taking shape, and you have these news reports where there aren't really like concrete accusations, just vague notions of people feeling uncomfortable. It takes the shape of past moral panics in this country that conservatives have participated in. And it's very similar to that. And Van Jones, who used to brand himself as some sort of progressive until he wanted to make some money, he's actively misleading people with this.
The idea of equating a keffiyeh, which is literally a symbol of resistance, not one of oppression.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's built into what was the Confederacy. The Confederacy was about maintaining their right to maintain slaves. The keffiyeh would not have any meaning were it not for the occupation. It wouldn't have any meaning because there'd be nothing to resist.
I can't imagine how insanity-inducing this is from a Muslim person. Like, say we don't protest holy sites in this country. I remember a huge to-do that they wanted to put a mosque in Lower Manhattan, and that mosque was never put there.
And that was one of the first videos I ever made was about that. That was relentless.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sorry,
it wasn't even a mosque. It was a community center with a mosque inside it.
Yeah. But I mean, there are real estate meetings selling West Bank land in churches. Like, that's the story. I don't understand how that just never becomes a story, and all of a sudden we skip to the people protesting outside.
Of course. Is there any more of his spewing of his?
Let's see the final. Go back to like 10 seconds if you don't mind.
We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it had been solved. I'm less concerned about the politicians now. I'm concerned about the people in my community in Los Angeles moving in a direction that is more and more dangerous, more and more scary, more and more destructive. The Jewish community does not need to have people doing those types of things. It's not helping anybody in Palestine, but it's making America a much less safe place for everybody.
It's tough to watch.
Yeah, I had a pretty difficult time just watching Van Jones talk about it. If it slows down the ability of people to sell stolen land, I think that's helpful.
What was that story in Texas? Somebody tried to drown 2 Muslim kids because they were Muslim?
Yeah.
What's the emergency we're responding to here?
Yeah, no, it was a woman. Her name is Elizabeth Wolf. I would like to name her because she smirks in her mugshot. But there was a Palestinian family at a pool in Texas, a mother and 2 children. The children in an apartment complex were playing in the shallow end of the pool, and she apparently intoxicated, got in and tried to drag them into the other side of the pool and push them into the water while the mother was there trying to stop it. So that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. This
Not the first people targeted with actual violence for just being Muslim.
Voicemail has been turned off. 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920 is the phone number. We will take your phone calls. Lawful Waffle. Guys, this isn't anti-Semitic. Look at this flyer. Where is your comment about what the former head of the Shin Bet said? Let me see if I can find that.
Or also what the
That flyer said the best
wait. Do you guys even have any idea if the synagogue is even sponsoring or supporting what's on these flyers? It was housed in the synagogue.
I've seen so much interesting. There's two sides to the Zionist defense of this. One is,
no, they just randomly picked a synagogue. It had nothing to do with the sale.
Right.
It's absurd.
There's two defenses. One, the liberal Zionists, which is like, how do you even know they were West Bank territories? Okay, sure, that real estate agency formally labeled them, but they didn't put the West Bank on the flyer. Maybe they didn't sell it. Well, it's like, well, why did they stop? Maybe because of protests. And then the other Zionists who are just like, yeah, that's Judea. We're selling it because it's ours.
Yeah, and also because this is, first of all, we address what we would have considered an anti-Semitic incident at the right off the rip, where we basically said that if you were protesting a random synagogue that had nothing to do with the sale of Palestinian land in the West Bank, that would be textbook anti-Semitism. Then we explained that the reason that we think that the coverage of this protest is misleading is because it's basically most mainstream outlets are leaving out that very key fact.
The one that says why they're protesting there.
And there were also members of the Jewish community as a part of those demonstrations.
I mean, we got the guy from TNEC. He says it as eloquently as anybody could. It's a 3-minute clip, so maybe we don't need to play it. But you can check that out. I mean, this is a very simple issue that's just obfuscated.
Jonathan Armstead. In 2008, rather than keep Bush's $500 tax rebate, I donated the money to 5 progressive groups, including Iraq Vets Against the War, ACLU, and ACORN. Also included was a group that fought climate change and poverty named Green for All, run by some dude named Van Jones, who seemed nice enough at the time. Long story short, would it be rude of me to write him and say I want my $100 back with interest based on how much of a shill he's become? Yeah, we were talking about that. That guy, when I interviewed him, I just remember interviewing him and afterwards thinking to myself, there's something off with that dude. I may have confronted him a little bit because he had done a speech at the yearly Coes convention. May have been Netroots Nation. I want to say it was in Minneapolis, actually. So I don't know what year that was. It may have been 2008. And, well, no, yeah, maybe a little bit later. I can't remember. And he made a speech where he was getting very aggressive about Glenn Beck. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, we need somebody who's willing to talk like that. And then a year or two later, he oh, you know what? It was in the wake of Occupy, or maybe it was right. And he had some organization that he was going to set up. And I remember during the interview, I said, so like, who is the villain? And he said something like, well, there is no villain.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's in the passive with him. And I was like, that's not
a good sign.
That's not a good sign. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.